The council chamber of Galactic Council Station was designed to humble, a cathedral of metal and starlight. Vast vaulted ceilings curved like the inside of a hollow moon. 1,000 seats of alien power floated in tiers around the central platform, each illuminated by its own spectral glow. Some were misted chambers of water. Some were obsidian thrones where creatures of fire coiled. Others were empty pods filled only with telepathic hums. At the center of it all stood one simple upright chair. Human steel, unadorned, Terran. And in that chair sat Ambassador Kaya Holt, spine straight, hands folded, jaw locked so tight the tendons in his neck ached. The laughter was everywhere. High, wet clicks from the Threxian cluster. Hollow, echoing rasp sounds from the Pyrora. A cascade of silken trills from the Soren. A musical kind of mockery that made Kaya's teeth grind. They laughed not because he'd told a joke, but because they had grown used to laughing at humans. At him. He kept his gaze forward, focused on the pulsing star map hanging above the chamber floor. The Sol system pulsed weakly on that map, a small blue dot among 1,000 brighter lights. How many times had he stood here listening to this chorus of mockery? 27 formal sessions. 58 emergency appeals. Centuries of being the smallest voice in the loudest room. We appreciate the passion, crooned the delegate of the Voth Dominion, a creature of liquid crystal that changed color with every inflection. But the human delegation must accept reality. Terra does not qualify for High Council representation. The vote has been decided. There was a murmur of amusement across the tiers. The word human had long been used like a punchline. Kaya inhaled through his nose slowly. He imagined the cold night air of Earth, standing on the plains outside Oslo Colony long before war or politics. Back when his father used to say, "Son, patience is a sword. It cuts cleanest when drawn last." The delegate from the Dreth Combine leaned forward, mandibles clicking. "Ambassador Holt, your species should be grateful. Trade rights. Basic protections. You have enough." Kaya rose, one controlled motion. His black diplomatic uniform caught the pale lights overhead. For a heartbeat, the laughter stilled. His height, his calmness, something about him carried a different weight than most Terrans they'd dismissed before. "Enough?" Kaya repeated softly. The word carried no anger, just a quiet gravity. But his chest burned. He stepped forward to the speaking platform. Beneath his boots, the transparent flooring showed the stars below, the cold gulf of space, infinite and silent. He thought of the ships out there. The ships that were still hidden. The ships he'd helped build strategy for during the colonial war. The galaxy thought humanity was weak because humanity wanted peace. They had no idea what slept in the dark. "Our kind has asked for a seat. Not a throne," Kaya said, his voice steady, trained, honed by years of careful diplomacy. "We've built colonies across 23 star systems. We've signed your treaties, paid your taxes, buried our dead in your wars. And still you call us children." A ripple of laughter again, like a cold wind through dead trees. Kaya's hand clenched at his side, nails digging into his palm. "Patience is a sword. Humanity has learned," he continued, "that respect is rarely given. It's taken. But we hoped," his voice caught slightly, deliberately controlled, "we hoped this council was different." The Voth shimmered gold, the color of condescension. "Ambassador Holt, I advise you to accept the council's decision with grace. The galaxy has no room for another power pretending to be significant." That did it. The sound of alien amusement swelled like a wave cresting over him. In the balconies, the translucent forms of the Pyrrha coiled in lazy spirals, their whispering thoughts brushing against Kaya's mind. Little human. Always begging. He lowered his eyes, not in submission, but to shut them out. And in that darkness he whispered 3 words only he could hear. "Guide me, Lord," not loud, not defiant. Just a whisper, old habit, older faith. His father used to kneel in the snow at night, staring at the stars and saying the same thing. Kaya had outgrown many things, but not that. When he opened his eyes, the laughter hadn't stopped, but his heartbeat had steadied. His mind, however, burned. Above, the Sol system still pulsed weakly on the star map. So small, so fragile, and yet, the same blue world that had clawed its way out of gravity's grip and walked among the stars. "We will consider," Kaya said finally, his voice neutral. The council laughed again, thinking they'd won. As the session ended, Ambassadors drifted out in their floating pods and crawling forms. Kaya remained seated in that single Terran chair alone long after the chamber dimmed. He looked up at the map again. He didn't need to imagine their fleets. He knew where they were. A quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. It was his aide, Lieutenant Mara Chen, young, sharp-eyed, barely 30. Sir, the vote was unanimous. I know. They've scheduled another trade quota reduction next cycle. They want us on our knees. Kaya exhaled slowly. And they'll get a bow. Just not the kind they expect, Mara hesitated. Sir, the fleet, not yet, Kaya said firmly. We hold, we watch. We let them laugh. Her jaw tightened. She'd served in the border wars. She hated this charade even more than he did, but she nodded. As she left, Kaya turned back toward the stars below the transparent floor. For a moment, the chamber was utterly silent. No alien laughter, no politics, just the deep, endless night. He pressed his hand against the cool glass and whispered to the void. You've laughed long enough. Closing beat, internal monologue for centuries. Humanity had knelt at this table, swallowing every insult for the sake of peace. But peace is not slavery, and mercy is not weakness. If they keep laughing, one day soon they'll hear the echo of their own fear. Kaya stood, shoulders straightened. Tomorrow the council would mock him again. Tomorrow he would endure it again. But one day, not tomorrow, not next week, but one day, the laughter would stop. The corridors of Galactic Council Station were nothing like home. Back on Earth, hallways smelled of oil, metal, and soil, living textures. Here everything reeked of sterilized perfection. Smooth silver walls, air-scrubbed of all scent, light without warmth. It felt like walking through a clean, dead organism. Ambassador Kaya Holt moved through those corridors alone, hands buried in the pockets of his uniform coat, every footstep echoing faintly against the polished floors. Outside the great viewport windows, stars hung suspended like frozen embers. 1,000 civilizations shone out there, but tonight he could only see one Sol, that fragile, beautiful blue star system now surrounded by other people's warships. The embassy doors hissed open to reveal the small Terran command center, a world within a world. Unlike the opulence of the council, the human space was practical, sharp-edged, alive. A low hum from data servers filled the air. Tactical maps flickered on wall displays, all centered on one pulsing sphere, Earth. Ambassador on deck, someone called automatically. Kaya waved it off. No ranks in here tonight. Around a central hollow table, 6 officers and analysts turned to face him. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces drawn. Even without reports, Kaya could see it in their eyes. Bad news. He stepped up to the table and let the hollow map rotate slowly. Red flares marked foreign fleet movements near. Terran borders too many to be exercises. Admiral Serrano, Kaya said quietly. A woman with iron-gray hair stepped forward, tapping the table. Dozens of markers shifted to a tighter formation around Sol. They've moved 3 Threxian carriers into the outer perimeter. Pura patrol squadrons are just outside legal border distance, and the Dreth are conducting what they call joint readiness drills, all pointed in one direction. Us, Kaya said. She nodded grimly. Mara Chen entered from the side door, tablet in hand. Intel confirms their combined fleet tonnage is over 5 times our declared capacity. But, she hesitated, glancing at the Admiral. Kaya turned toward her fully. But what? Mara lowered her voice. They don't know. Not really. The Council still thinks our Navy is what we show them. They don't see what's hidden. Kaya let that hang in the air. For years, Terran Command had played the fool, signing treaties that limited their fleet growth while quietly developing off-ledger shipyards in the Kuiper Expanse. Humanity had mastered something most alien empires hadn't bothered to imagine: strategic invisibility. They think we're soft, Admiral Serrano said, but they've never bled against us in a real war. Kaya stared at the flickering map. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but the instincts remained. The same instincts that once made him stand under alien artillery fire with nothing but a broken rifle and a prayer. Any direct threats? He asked. Nothing on record. But they're positioning. The Admiral exhaled through her teeth. They're tightening the noose. Kaya looked away from the map. His eyes fell on a small photo taped to the edge of the holotable, a picture of a young boy grinning in a field of golden wheat. His son, Daniel, 12 years old. Last time Kaya saw him, he'd asked, "Dad, are you the one who keeps the stars safe?" And Kaya had lied just a little. I talk to the ones who can. He swallowed hard. Mara caught the glance. Sir, you promised him no more wars. Kaya nodded slowly. I did. And yet, the Admiral muttered, war may not care what we promise. Kaya closed his eyes for a moment. In the stillness of his mind, a childhood memory surfaced. His father's rough hands building a radio during the blackouts, whispering, even the smallest light can defy the night. He looked up again. If war comes, we won't be the ones who brought it. A shrill chime broke the silence. A communications officer spoke up. Incoming diplomatic packet from the Council Secretariat. Kaya's gut already knew. On the main screen appeared a pristine transmission stamped with a dozen alien seals. The message was cold, bureaucratic, but its meaning was clear. Due to concerns of instability, Council fleets will remain near Sol for an indefinite security operation. Terran resistance will be viewed as hostile. No discussion, no vote, no mask anymore. Admiral Serrano's jaw tightened. That's occupation. Kaya didn't speak right away. His pulse thudded against his temple, slow and steady. When he finally did, his voice was calm. They've mistaken patience for permission. Mara leaned forward. Sir, what now? Kaya turned toward the large embassy window. Beyond it lay the endless sea of stars. For years he'd sat at their tables, endured their laughter, trusted that diplomacy would buy time. It had, and now that time was almost gone. Schedule an emergency address to the Council, Kaya said. The Admiral raised an eyebrow. Sir, they won't listen. They don't have to. Kaya's eyes narrowed slightly. They just need to hear the last offer. Hours later, Kaya stood alone in his quarters. The room was small, Spartan. On a shelf sat a single memento, a folded Terran flag stained by dust from the colonial war front. He ran his fingers over the fabric, feeling the faint rough threads. In the distance, the station's engines hummed like a living heartbeat. He lowered himself onto the small prayer mat by the window, not something he displayed publicly. His position as an ambassador demanded neutrality, but faith for Kaya was not a banner to wave. It was an anchor. He bowed his head and whispered softly, If this is the storm, let me stand. The stars outside didn't answer, but they didn't need to. He felt the silence settle inside him, steadying his pulse, sharpening his resolve. Dad, Daniel's voice echoed faintly in his memory. Will they ever stop laughing at us? Yes, Kaya murmured to the window. One day, a soft chime from his desk interrupted his thoughts. A secure channel request, priority 1. He recognized the code instantly, Sol Command. He accepted. The face of the Terran president appeared, tired but unshaken. Kaya, we see the fleets. The Council thinks this is a show of force. It's not a show, Kaya replied. It's a warning. The president's voice was quiet. How long until they cross the line? Days, maybe hours, a pause. Then, are we ready? Kaya inhaled deeply, then nodded. More than they know? The president gave a faint, grim smile. Then speak your last words for peace. The rest will be in God's hands. The line went dead. Kaya stood at the window for a long time, letting the cold starlight spill across his face. Below the station, the galaxy's greatest fleet gathered around Sol like vultures around a wounded animal. But Sol wasn't wounded. It was waiting, watching, preparing. The laughter in the council chamber still echoed in his head, but for the first time it no longer stung. It sharpened him. Tomorrow he would stand before them again, not as a man begging for mercy, but as a man drawing a line in the stars. Closing beat, internal monologue. There comes a moment when patience hardens into steel, when faith turns into fire, when the one who begged for peace becomes the storm he tried to avoid. Kaya straightened his collar, his reflection faint in the glass. His whisper was barely audible. God willing, let them hear me clearly. Tomorrow would be humanity's last plea. The chamber of Galactic Council Station had never been silent for long. It was built for noise, the murmurs of empires, the chatter of pride, the echo of arrogance layered into its walls like old smoke. But this morning, as Ambassador Kaya Holt walked into the center ring, something about his presence quieted the hall. Not out of respect. Out of curiosity. Humans were supposed to beg softly. He wore the same black Terran uniform. No medals, no embellishment. The plain fabric almost offended the alien delegates in their shimmering robes, liquid skins, or armored exoshells. The light above the chamber cast a faint halo over the central platform, illuminating Kaya against the ocean of alien faces. Around him floated tiers of representatives. The Soren delegates coiled in shimmering serpentine arcs, glowing faint blue in their environmental bubbles. The Voth flickered gold, broadcasting smug amusement across the chamber. The Pyrrha hovered in columns of shadow and heat, their voices like distant storms. Kaya did not bow this time. He lifted his chin, breathing in the filtered air that always smelled faintly of sterilized ozone. His heart beat steady against his ribs, the rhythm of a man walking to the edge of something irreversible. The council chair, a massive crystalline entity of the Voth Dominion, shimmered sharply. Ambassador Holt of Terra, you have been granted the courtesy of final address regarding the matter of council fleet presence around Sol. Speak quickly. Kaya stared at the chair. Courtesy? He said softly, letting the word linger. Courtesy is what the strong offer the weak when they want to pretend they're merciful. A hush. A few alien heads tilted, sensing the edge in his voice. Kaya stepped closer to the mic array embedded in the floor. For 2 centuries, he began, his voice calm but resonant. Terra has bent its knee. We joined your treaties. We accepted your trade tariffs. We even bled in your wars under your flags to earn a seat at your table. He let the silence stretch. His hands were open at his sides, but his spine was a blade. And after all that, you place fleets at our doorstep and call it security. A ripple of chuckles, soft and dismissive, moved through the chamber. The sound slid into Kaya like a knife, but he didn't flinch. The Dreth Combine ambassador, a creature of segmented chitin and glinting eyes, leaned forward with a rasping purr. Humans should be grateful. The Council offers protection to keep Sol stable. You have nothing to fear. Protection, Kaya echoed. From whom? A laugh. From yourselves. The chamber joined in, their laughter rolling like a slow storm tide. Kaya felt the burn rising in his chest. Not of rage, but of a deep, ancient exhaustion. How many times had humans been laughed at? Earth's history was soaked in it. Mocked for climbing mountains, mocked for sailing oceans, mocked for aiming at the stars. And every single time, humanity climbed anyway. Kaya's voice cut clean through the noise. We are not children, he said, and Earth is not a colony to be pacified. The laughter faltered, just a little. His voice had weight now, the tone of someone who wasn't asking anymore. You mock our faith, you mock our patience, but patience isn't weakness. Mercy isn't submission. You've mistaken quiet hands for empty ones. On the far left balcony, a Soren delegate let out a musical trill, almost like laughter but more like curiosity. Your words are loud, little human, it sang. But your fleets are small. Kaya turned toward the voice. Only fools measure power by what they can see. The chair leaned forward, its crystalline edges gleaming like razors. Ambassador Holt, are you threatening the Council? Kaya inhaled deeply, letting the breath cool the fire building inside him. Patience is a sword, his father's voice echoed in his memory. Draw it only once. I'm giving you one last chance to do the right thing, Kaya said evenly. Withdraw your fleets. Recognize our sovereignty. Sit with us as equals or don't sit with us at all. For a long moment, the chamber was still. Then the laughter erupted again, louder than before. The Voth's crystalline hum was like glass bells. The Dreth's mandibles clattered like applause. The Pyrrha rippled heat through the air, mocking and cruel. Kaya stood at the center of it all, motionless. In the balcony's shadows, one alien did not laugh. A Koran observer, young, curious, pale as moonlight, tilted its head and watched Kaya whisper something under his breath. It leaned toward its elder and asked in its soft, clicking tongue, "Why does the human bow his head to the air?" The elder Koran shrugged. Their species believes in someone unseen. Strange, the young one murmured. Strange, and not afraid, Kaya whispered silently. If this is the moment, then guide my tongue. Then he lifted his head again. You will remember this day, he said clearly, projecting his voice to every corner of the chamber, not because humanity begged, but because this was the last time it did. A few alien delegates exchanged looks, the kind animals give when the prey bares its teeth. The chair spoke coldly. The Council rejects Terra's demand. The fleets will remain. The vote is final. Kaya didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply let the words fall into the silence between heartbeats. Final. As the session dissolved into idle chatter and mockery, Kaya turned and walked toward the exit. He didn't look back. His boots echoed steadily against the polished floor. He could feel their laughter behind him, pressing like a weight on his shoulders. But beneath that weight, something else coiled. Not despair. Resolve. Outside, in the quiet corridor, Mara Chen waited for him. Her face said it all. She'd watched the broadcast. They laughed, she whispered. They always do, Kaya replied. Her voice trembled just a little. And now? Kaya paused at the viewport. Sol hung in the distance, a fragile blue spark wrapped in growing shadows. But he didn't see fragility. He saw a sleeping giant. He turned to Mara and said softly but with iron in his throat, "Now, we stop asking." Hours later, he stood alone on the embassy balcony overlooking the docking spires. Below, fleets from alien powers stretched out like a net over the void. Bright engines. Cold hearts, he whispered toward the stars, almost to himself. They think mercy is weakness. And in the silence of that cold station, a quiet voice from memory, his father's, firm and unwavering, answered in his mind. Then show them the difference. Closing beat, internal monologue. The laughter of the powerful has always sounded the same. It rang in the ears of farmers when they spoke of flying. It mocked the explorers when they built ships. It mocked the dreamers who reached for the sky. And yet humanity climbed. Humanity flew. Humanity reached. Kaya's eyes narrowed at the stars. "Enjoy your laughter," he murmured. "Tomorrow the stars will listen to us." The storm rolled over the broken plains like a living beast, dragging shadows across a sky fractured by falling embers. The air was thick with the stench of scorched iron and burning ozone. Beneath the collapsing light of the alien dusk, what remained of the human expeditionary fleet lay like a scattered skeleton. Ships that once roared across the void now lay cracked and silent, their spines jutting upward from the dust as if still reaching for the stars that had abandoned them. In the center of the devastation, a single structure still stood, a subterranean hangar cut deep into the bedrock, its steel entrance blackened but holding. It was here that Captain Aurelius stood, staring at the holographic projection of the battlefield, each red marker a wound where thousands of lives had once breathed. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence inside the hangar said more than words ever could. The walls around him were crowded with the remnants of a fractured command, wounded soldiers leaning against crates, exhausted engineers wiping grime from their faces, medics stitching flesh that still trembled with shock. Above, the hum of the fusion core was irregular now, a dying heartbeat that made the air vibrate like the low growl of some invisible predator. Aurelius clenched the edge of the hollow table until his knuckles burned white. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Rian Solis, stepped forward, his uniform torn, his voice steady only because someone needed it to be. "They've breached the third perimeter. We'll lose the northern gate before dawn." Aurelius's gaze didn't leave the red flood of enemy movements. "And the southern ridges?" "Gone, the arc batteries silent. Last transmission was screaming." The captain exhaled through his teeth a slow hiss that mingled with the hum of dying machines. Outside, the enemy was closing in. They weren't soldiers as humanity understood them. The Zelari, living architecture shaped from symbiotic flesh and metal, moved in waves. Their shapes twisted through the smoke like predators that had learned the rhythm of war. They didn't fire in lines. They flowed like water around broken defenses, learning, adapting, consuming. It was not a war. It was an unmaking. Beneath the hangar in the auxiliary vaults, the arc core pulsed with a steady blue light, a relic of an older human dream, one last key to survival. If the arc core reached orbit, it could save what was left of Earth's scattered colonies. If it was taken, humanity would drown in silence forever. The storm outside deepened, lightning cracking across the distant spires where the Zelari fed on the ruins. Aurelius finally spoke, voice low but unyielding. "Then we don't defend the gates," he said. "We defend the core." Dozens of eyes lifted toward him. Exhaustion hung like lead, but beneath it, a spark. Humanity's last weapon was never their technology. It was the fire in their bones. Lieutenant Solis stepped closer. "That means sealing the hangar. No one gets out." "Exactly," Aurelius answered. "We hold this place until the last star burns out, or until the arc flies." Outside, the first wave slammed against the ruined perimeter. a shrieking storm of alien steel and organic claws. The ground trembled, the night bled light, and beneath that dying sky the last defenders of a broken fleet drew their lines in the ashes. The night split open like torn steel. A roar of alien shrieks rolled over the plain, swelling like a tidal wave. Then the first impact hit. The northern ridge erupted in flame. Black soil became glass. Shattered towers burned like candles in a storm. The Zilari came not as a disciplined army, but as a living tempest. Thousands of shimmering, bone-armored creatures running on clawed limbs, their bodies laced with silver and violet bioluminescence. Their movements had a rhythm to them, too precise for chaos, too feral for order. Inside the subterranean hangar, klaxons wailed, lights turned crimson, and the defenders surged into position. Rows of human soldiers, some veterans, some barely more than frightened kids, took their places behind blast barricades. Their armor was scuffed, their faces streaked with ash and blood, but their eyes burned with something the enemy could never mimic: defiance. Captain Aurelius strode across the command line like a shadow carved from iron. "Hold the perimeter. Don't waste a single round. The Ark must fly," he barked. Above the hangar entrance, artillery cannons pivoted into place. The ground shook with the rumble of charging plasma capacitors. Sparks danced from the old generators. The enemy broke through the outer ruins. Dozens, then hundreds of Zilari charged into the killing field. Their bodies flickered in the muzzle flashes like fragments of a nightmare. The first volley of human fire lit up the night. Hundreds of plasma bolts and kinetic rounds ripped across the plain, carving blue arcs through the storm. The front ranks of the Zilari were torn apart, flesh and metal bursting into showers of violet ichor. But they didn't stop. They never stopped. They climbed over their own dead like waves crawling over rocks. "Reload!" someone shouted. "Sector Bravo's holding, barely." Then the second wave hit. Taller, heavier, their armor thicker, their spines jagged with blade-like growths. They carried no weapons. They were the weapons. One slammed into the barricade like a freight train, the shockwave throwing 3 soldiers to the ground. Another climbed the watchtower, impaling a gunner in a single strike. Aurelius raised his sidearm, a heavy plasma revolver forged on the dying colonies of Titan, and fired into the creature's skull. It fell in a sizzling heap, the gun's recoil shaking his wrist. "Solis, flank units, sector east," he barked. Lieutenant Ryan Solis leapt over a fallen barricade, rallying a cluster of soldiers. He moved like a blade through smoke, his pulse rifle barking blue fire. "For the Ark," he roared, and for a moment the humans pushed the tide back. But then the sky cracked open. A thunderous shape descended through the storm, something massive. A Zilari siege beast taller than the hangar itself. Its limbs were jointed wrong, its face a grotesque mask of living crystal. It slammed down into the killing field with a quake that shook the earth. "Incoming!" "Heavy class," a spotter screamed. Artillery opened up, raining shells into the creature's hide. It staggered, but it did not fall. The siege beast opened its maw, and a blast of searing white energy tore through the outer trench. Dozens of defenders were vaporized in a flash of heat and light. A second blast followed, melting a line of tanks into glowing slag. The northern gate shuddered. Bolts popped loose. Concrete cracked. Aurelius stood at the center of the inferno, smoke and ash swirling around him, voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "This is where we hold. This is where the line lives. For every step they take, make them bleed," the defenders roared back. Not polished, not trained, just raw fury. As the alien storm crashed against the last human wall, the battle became something brutal and intimate. Gunfire turned into close combat. Plasma bayonets clashed with chitin blades. Soldiers screamed, aliens shrieked, and the night became a forge of death. Somewhere beneath the hangar floor, deep in the launch vault, the Ark core pulsed brighter. Its countdown had begun, the line bent, but it did not break. Not yet. The battlefield was a furnace. The air itself felt molten, thick with ash, ozone, and the metallic taste of blood. Over the roar of plasma fire and alien screeches, the thunder of the siege beast steps drowned everything else. Every impact was an earthquake. The northern barricade was crumbling like wet paper beneath its weight. Captain Aurelius slammed a fresh cell into his revolver, his knuckles raw and blackened with soot. He could hear the distant countdown echoing through the underground channels. The Ark's engines were spooling up. 17 minutes, came Solace's voice through the comm. 17 minutes and we leave this rock behind. If we're still breathing, Aurelius replied. The Zalari siege beast raised its head to the sky and let out a scream that rattled bones. Its chest split open, revealing a swirling mass of violet light. The humans braced, expecting another energy blast, but instead the sky responded. Aurelius's eyes widened. The storm clouds above twisted into a spiral, pulling apart like a curtain. Through the opening, faint glimmers appeared. Like stars. No, not stars, shapes. Hundreds of massive silhouettes were moving in orbit. And then the comms began to scream. Multiple signatures incoming. Zalari fleet in high orbit. It's a full-scale incursion, oh my god. The stars began to burn. Fire streaked across the sky as drop pods the size of buildings slammed through the atmosphere. Each one carried more soldiers than the entire Terran garrison on this colony. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was an invasion. Aurelius clenched his jaw so tight it hurt. The Council had laughed at Earth. They'd told them to be patient, to negotiate. And now here they were, burning beneath alien boots. Something flickered behind the captain's eyes. Not fear, something older, harder. Solace, he said calmly. Yes, sir. Phase 0. Silence crackled over the comm. Then Solace's breath hitched. Are you sure? We were never meant to survive this, Aurelius said. But they will remember us. All along the trenches, old codes were entered into weathered terminals. Magnetic locks clicked open beneath the ground. A whisper spread through the human lines, soldiers bruised and bleeding. Passing it like fire in dry grass, Phase 0. Buried beneath the battlefield. In forgotten tunnels from the early colony days, thousands of cobalt fusion charges armed themselves. A fail-safe humanity had installed, not to win, but to deny. The alien army kept pouring in. Drop pods crashed like meteors. The siege beast stepped closer, shaking the world with every movement. And in that moment, standing on the brink of extinction, Aurelius finally understood something quiet and sharp. Humanity's strength was never in numbers, never in superior firepower. It was in their refusal to kneel. Above, in orbit, alien commanders watched with cold amusement. One of them, a Zalari warlord wrapped in bone metal armor, hissed at his advisors. The Terrans resist like vermin. They will break, another replied, but then the warlord noticed something strange on the sensors. Energy spikes beneath the surface, dozens, then hundreds. What are they doing? Aurelius stared at the siege beast through the cracked visor of his helmet. His breathing was steady. He thought of his wife, his son, the green hills of old Earth he'd never see again. And he whispered so softly only the stars might hear. Not luck. Someone wanted me to live this long. For this, all units, he said. This is Aurelius. If you're still breathing, listen. We may not have a future here, but Earth does. Make this matter. The human line, what was left of it, stood taller. Men and women covered in blood raised their weapons again, not because they thought they could win, but because this was their last stand. The Ark's engines roared louder, a low thunder like the breath of some sleeping god awakening. The siege beast lunged. The charges ignited. The Earth itself convulsed. Tunnels collapsed. Blue-white light surged upward like the veins of a star being born beneath the soil. The shockwave tore through the alien ranks, flinging Zalari warriors into the air like broken toys. The siege beast screamed as its crystalline armor shattered under the force. For the first time in the entire campaign, the alien advance stopped. But victory was not free. Entire sections of the human defense collapsed. Dozens of soldiers were buried in the quake. Solus himself was thrown against a broken pillar, blood streaking his temple. Captain? He croaked. Still here, Aurelius answered, voice hoarse. Still fighting. The alien fleet was still descending. This was only the beginning. But Earth's defenders had drawn a line in fire, and they would make the galaxy remember it. Far above, on the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Kaya Holt watched the reports flood in. The Zalari attack had begun, on live feeds transmitted across every major system. Council members whispered nervously. Kaya didn't speak. He only watched the burning colony, and in the flames he saw something that the Council never would. Not weakness, not desperation. Will. Captain! Solace rasped through static. What now? Aurelius stared at the enemy tide crawling over their dead. Now, he said, we remind them who we are. The sky burned red. The line held, the turning point had come. For centuries, the galaxy had mocked humanity, called them primitive, emotional, unfit to stand as equals among the elder races. The Galactic Council had stripped their defense rights, forced their fleets to mothball, and bound Earth to peace treaties written with invisible chains. But deep beneath that diplomacy, humanity had remembered. The Zelari fleet filled the sky like a plague. Dozens of war leviathans spread across orbit, their hulls made of living crystal that glowed like embers in a black ocean. Drop pods still screamed toward the burning colony, where Captain Aurelius and the survivors held what was left of the line. Solace leaned against a shattered barricade, his armor cracked and blood seeping through the seams. "They're not stopping," he whispered. Aurelius didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, the faint shimmer in the upper atmosphere that only someone who had spent years in combat could notice. Something was coming. Orbit. High above the colony, a patch of darkness split open in the void, like space itself had been peeled away. No council sensor saw it. No Zelari ship detected it. But the humans who had built it had always intended it this way. From the black, a single vessel emerged. Not council-made, not recorded in any registry. A Terran warship, sleek, silent, matte black, bristling with kinetic lances and plasma lances that had been outlawed 2 centuries earlier. Its name burned on the hull in silent defiance, TSS Resolute, and then another came. And another, one by one, like stars igniting in a night that had forgotten their light. A hidden fleet unfolded from shadow. 60 warships, 10 dreadnoughts, 4 carriers. And at the center, an arc-sized command vessel older than most council nations themselves, its engines purring like a beast too long kept on a leash. The Terran Shadow Fleet had arrived. Inside the council chamber aboard Galactic Council Station, diplomats and alien leaders watched the tactical holomap stutter and glitch. "Unknown signatures detected in the Sol expansion rim." "No, wait, those are Terran transponders." "Impossible. They're supposed to have no fleet." Kaya Holt leaned forward slowly, hands clasped behind his back. "Supposed to," he murmured. Back on the ground, Aurelius's helmet crackled. "This is Admiral Veil of the Terran Shadow Fleet," came a calm, cold voice. "Captain Aurelius, we've got your distress beacon. We're here to clean house." For the first time in hours, Aurelius let out a ragged laugh, not out of joy, but out of the raw, savage satisfaction that came from knowing the enemy was about to feel what they had made humanity hold back for centuries. "Took you long enough," he growled. "We don't do early entrances, Captain. We do decisive ones," Veil replied. The sky lit up. Terran dreadnoughts opened fire. Kinetic rods, silent, invisible, faster than light, pierced through Zelari capital ships like hot nails through ice. No grand explosions, just clean surgical destruction. Ships that had hung over the colony like executioners fell burning into the atmosphere, their crystal hulls cracking apart like glass. Fighter swarms poured out of Terran carriers, sleek, black-winged machines with magnetic rail cannons that spat death with mathematical precision. The Zelari, for the first time in their proud conquest, hesitated. Their warlord, watching from orbit, snarled in disbelief. This cannot be. They were disarmed, but the truth was simple. Humans had never disarmed. They had simply hidden their claws until the galaxy leaned too close. On the ground, soldiers cheered even as the battle raged. Not because they were saved yet, but because they had seen something the galaxy said didn't exist. Hope with engines. "Shadow Fleet," Solace muttered, eyes reflecting the fire in the sky. "I thought they were a myth." "Everything they laugh at us for," Aurelius said, "they've never understood. We plan, we wait, and then we hit back." The council chamber was chaos. "This is a violation of the peace accords," a scaled diplomat roared. "Peace?" Kaya Holt finally said, voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "When one side gets to keep their fleets, their power, and their boots on our neck, that's not peace. That's permission, and Earth's done asking for it." His words were transmitted across 100 channels, across 1,000 worlds. The galaxy had mocked humanity's patience. It was about to learn what their wrath looked like. Back in orbit, Admiral Veil gave the order that would be etched into the history of 1,000 systems. All units, Operation Dawnbreak. No survivors. No retreat. Let them understand the price of cornering humanity. Missiles screamed silently through the void. Ion storms danced over the alien fleet. And one by one the Zalari war machines began to die. But Aurelius knew this was not the end. The Zalari would not surrender easily, and more importantly, the Council itself would not forgive Earth for revealing the truth. Still, as the sky burned in humanity's colors for the first time in centuries, he felt no fear. Only a quiet, stubborn faith in something greater, something he had whispered to the stars as a child on a quiet hill. This can't just be an accident. Maybe God didn't fight battles for them. But he had given them the will to stand when the universe told them to kneel. "Captain," Solace said softly, staring at the burning heavens. "What now?" Aurelius reloaded his revolver with a click that echoed through the trench. "Now, Lieutenant," he said, a half-smile cutting through the ash on his face. "We finish this." The tide of war had turned, but the reckoning had only just begun. The ground shook like the heartbeat of a dying god. The colony sky had turned into a cathedral of fire. Streaks of burning alien ships carved bright scars across the black. The Shadow Fleet was no myth now. It was judgment written in plasma and steel, but the battle was far from won. The Zalari were still everywhere, thousands entrenched across the valley floor, their siege beasts crawling from the shattered pod craters, their living war machines screaming with alien fury. And beneath the burning sky, Captain Aurelius stood at the front line, armor cracked, blood on his lips, weapon steady. Around him, the remnants of the garrison rose from rubble like ghosts unwilling to stay dead. "Command, this is ground one," Aurelius rasped into his comm. "We're still here. What's your move?" The reply came in the cool, steady tone of Admiral Veil aboard the command ship, TSS Resolute. "Captain, air superiority is secured. We're moving to burn their fleet out of orbit, but we need that arc to launch. Hold the ground perimeter. If they break through now, everything burns." "Copy," Aurelius answered. "We'll hold." Even if it kills us, he lowered the comm and turned to his men, what remained of them. Their faces were filthy and pale beneath the glare of alien flames, their armor scorched, their ammo nearly spent. But their eyes were alive, fierce, human. "Listen up," Aurelius shouted over the roar of artillery. "This is it. They came to wipe us out. But today, they learn what it means to bleed for every step they take. For Earth, for the Ark, for every insult we ever swallowed." The soldiers answered, not with neat formation, but with a roar that shook the trench walls. In orbit, the Shadow Fleet carved the heavens apart. Terran dreadnoughts hurled kinetic rods through alien leviathans with surgical precision. Fighters danced like black hawks through broken fire trails, shredding Zalari interceptors. The enemy's advantage in numbers was being dismantled with quiet, brutal efficiency. But then, the alien fleet changed its shape. The Zalari had always been clever predators. Their capital ships folded into one another, twisting like bone into a colossal war form. A hive engine, a biomechanical fortress the size of a moon fragment. Its energy core flared violet, devouring the wreckage of its own fleet to grow stronger. "Admiral," a tactical officer barked, "they're merging into a hive engine." "Then we burn the hive," Vale replied, voice colder than vacuum. He turned to his bridge crew. "All capital ships, concentrate fire on the core. Do not let that thing reach the Ark." Back on the surface, a new sound joined the battle, the scream of atmospheric fighters slicing through the night. Sleek Terran interceptors swooped low over the trenches, strafing alien positions with railgun bursts. The ground erupted in alien ichor and shattered armor. "Shadow Angels inbound!" Solus yelled, raising his fist toward the sky. "Push forward!" Aurelius roared. The humans surged out of their defenses like a storm uncoiling. No perfect formation, no glittering banners. Just grit and fury. They stormed alien lines with everything left, grenades, bayonets, fists. The Zalari shrieked in their strange harmonic language as plasma fire cut through their ranks. But even outnumbered, the humans pressed forward. Because the difference between them and their enemy wasn't just technology. It was will. A siege beast lunged, ripping through a wall like paper. Aurelius rolled beneath its swipe, plasma revolver drawn. He emptied 3 rounds into its glowing chest before leaping onto its back. "Not today," he hissed. He jammed a pulse grenade into the creature's breathing vents and leapt clear. The explosion split the beast open like a furnace door, spilling alien fire across the battlefield. Solus ran up beside him, face smeared with black soot. "You're insane." "No," Aurelius said. "Just Terran." Above them, the hive engine fired its first shot. A single beam of violet energy lanced downward, striking the western ridge. The shockwave flattened trees, bunkers, entire trench lines. Human soldiers were thrown like rag dolls. Admiral Veil's fleet responded with everything they had. Rail cannons, plasma lances, and EMP torpedoes lit the void. The hive engine screamed, a sound that rattled through bones and hull plating alike. "Core shields dropping," a bridge officer cried. "Don't stop," Veil answered. "Not until it's ash." Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface, the Ark's launch sequence reached its final stage. Tremors ran through the colony as massive grav lifts came online. In the launch bay, engineers whispered quick prayers. Not to any machine, but to the one they still believed watched over humanity in the void. One old technician placed his trembling hand on the Ark's hull and whispered, "We've come too far to die now. Someone's listening. I know it." On the front line, the human push collided with the last alien trench like two storms meeting. Close combat turned into something raw, personal, and terrifyingly human. A soldier, out of ammo, used a shovel to cave in an alien skull. Another tackled a Zilari officer off a ridge. Aurelius himself drove his knife into the throat of a drone creature and ripped it open with a grunt that sounded more like a growl. And through it all, the humans kept moving, inch by inch, step by brutal step. Solace caught sight of something beyond the ridge. "Captain, it's clear." Aurelius blinked sweat from his eyes. For the first time since the siege began, the way to the Ark was open. "Then we finish this," Aurelius said. "We end it." In orbit, the hive engine shuddered. The last volley from the Resolute punched through its violet core. Light ripped outward in a silent supernova. The alien fortress crumbled into burning shards that rained down like falling stars. Cheers erupted across the comms. But Aurelius didn't cheer. He knew the war wasn't won until the last soldier got home. The Ark's engines roared to life. The ground itself split beneath its thrusters. The ship, humanity's last Ark, a lifeboat carrying the future, began to rise. "This is Admiral Veil," came the voice over every Terran channel. "The Ark is airborne. Protect it with everything you have," and humanity answered. Every ship in orbit, every soldier on the ground, every ounce of blood they still had to give. The battle had turned. The Ark was in the sky, and humanity was no longer the species that begged for a seat at the table. They had set the table on fire and claimed their place. But the war was not over yet. "Captain," Solace breathed, watching the Ark ascend. "They thought we'd kneel," Aurelius replied, holstering his revolver. "Instead, they'll kneel to the memory of this night." Above them, the stars burned with Terran fire, and the galaxy had begun to tremble. The Ark tore through the atmosphere like a newborn sun. Its colossal engines thundered, turning night into a false dawn. Beneath its ascent, the battlefield burned, a graveyard of steel and flesh where human blood had bought each precious second of flight. In orbit, the Terran Shadow Fleet shifted formation like a blade twisting in a wound. They formed a wall of warships between the Ark's climbing trajectory and the burning remnants of the Zilari hive. It wasn't a retreat. It was a sacrifice line. Captain Aurelius stood at the ridge watching the Ark ascend, its silhouette framed against the rising sun. Wind tore through his scorched armor. The comms screamed with fleet chatter, orders, losses, last words. "Aurelius," came Admiral Veil's voice over the secure channel, steady as bedrock. "She's almost clear. But they're coming. Everything they have left." The captain scanned the sky. He saw it then, an avalanche of violet light. The Zilari war swarm was pouring in from the dark edge of the system. Not organized, not elegant, just furious. They were coming to drag humanity's last hope out of the sky. "We hold the line," Aurelius said. "Aye," Veil answered. "We were born for it." Shadow Fleet Command Bridge, TSS Resolute alarms wailed, painting the command deck in pulses of red. Admiral Veil leaned over the tactical table, eyes locked on the swarm closing in like a tidal wave. "All ships," he said into the comm, "you know what this is. If we break, humanity dies in orbit. If we hold, she lives, and that's enough." His words were quiet, but across the fleet, captains answered with silent affirmations. Not because they expected to live, but because some things are worth dying for. 1,000 years of mockery had ended. Humanity would be remembered. Ground frontline Solace stumbled through the shattered trench, smoke curling around him. The human perimeter was a ruin now. Walls crushed, plasma scorched earth, alien bodies strewn like discarded nightmares. Aurelius checked his revolver, one cylinder half full, armor cracked. Breath heavy. He looked at Solace, mud on his face, blood drying on his cheek. A boy who had become a soldier in a single night. "Sir," Solace said, this is suicide." "No," Aurelius replied, a slow, fierce smile breaking through the exhaustion. "This is faith." He glanced upward at the ascending arc, now a speck of gold against the black. "Someone wanted us to get this far. The rest is on us." Orbit. The first impact, the Zilari swarm crashed against the Terran fleet like a storm of knives. Kinetic fire tore through the first wave, vaporizing hundreds of fighters. Terran dreadnoughts rotated their hulls like armored titans, shielding the Ark's ascent vector. But numbers had weight, and the enemy had so many. The TSS Iron Horizon, a cruiser older than half the fleet, took the first hit. A lance of violet energy sheared its bow clean off. Its captain didn't scream. Instead, he locked his engines, rammed his dying ship straight into the enemy carrier, and detonated his reactor. A white star bloomed in the darkness. The fleet whispered his name. Then they kept firing. Admiral Vale's view veil watched the death count rise like falling rain, ship after ship, name after name. These weren't just soldiers. They were people who had trained in secret, prayed in silence, waited decades for the moment humanity would stop bowing. "They think we're cornered," he said softly. "They don't understand what a cornered human does." He gave the order that burned into history. "Initiate Valkyrie Protocol." Beneath the fleet, hidden panels slid open on dreadnought hulls. Thousands of kinetic lances, plasma torpedoes, and singularity charges armed themselves at once. The fleet roared. Not like machines, but like wolves finally unleashed. Ground. Final push. Aurelius and Solace moved through the chaos like ghosts. Their orders were simple. Destroy anything that might breach the Ark's escape corridor. Zilari shock troops were still dropping from the sky like locusts. One alien lunged, a blade appendage slicing through air. Aurelius ducked, grabbed its throat, and snapped it like dry wood. Solace hurled a grenade into a cluster of drones, the explosion painting the trench walls in alien ichor. "Sir, look," Solace shouted. On the ridge above them, the last siege beast was dragging itself forward, half its body burned but still alive, still monstrous. If it reached the launch platform, it could bring the Ark down. Aurelius felt every nerve in his body scream from exhaustion. But he didn't stop. He ran up the ridge, toward the monster. The siege beast bellowed, its chest glowing violet. He didn't flinch. He whispered, "Not luck. Someone wanted me here." He vaulted onto its back, pulled the last pulse grenade from his belt, and jammed it deep between its plates. "For Earth," he growled. The explosion ripped the beast apart, lighting the ridge in fire. He tumbled down with it, chest heaving, body breaking. But the path was clear. Orbit. The great burn, the Valkyrie Protocol fired. Hundreds of Terran warships launched their entire payloads in a synchronized barrage. The night sky vanished behind a wall of light. The Zilari swarm shattered under the onslaught. Some ships survived, others disintegrated like glass in a furnace. The Resolute shuddered under multiple impacts, its starboard deck in flames. Admiral Vale held the railing as sparks rained down around him. "Status of the Ark," he barked. "Past upper atmosphere. Jump engines spinning up." "Then keep firing," he said almost gently. "Buy her the stars." The prayer on the Ark's engineering deck, an old technician, hand still on the hull, closed his eyes as alarms blared. "God, if you've brought us this far," he whispered, "don't let it end here." Up in orbit, Vale heard that same prayer in his bones. He didn't need to say it aloud. He felt it, every soldier did. Every dying ship did. It was woven into the silence between gunfire. The last stand as the Ark's jump drive reached critical spin. The Resolute and what remained of the Shadow Fleet formed a tightening ring. One by one, the outer ships fell. Explosions painted the void in fire. Vale looked at the burning horizon of space and smiled. "This is the part," he whispered, "where legends are born." "Sir?" a bridge officer said, voice cracking. "Hull integrity's failing." "Then let's fail loudly." The Resolute plowed into the oncoming swarm, its entire spine igniting. The Admiral triggered the final override, a core overload. "For the Ark," he said. The explosion tore through the swarm like the wrath of a sleeping god. Violet ships burned. The void turned white. Atmosphere. The departure Aurelius lay on the battlefield watching the arc break through the clouds. A single golden streak against the black. He whispered, voice barely more than a breath. Fly. The arc's jump engines flared, and in a blink of light, humanity's last hope vanished into deep space. Silence fell. Not peace, not safety, just silence. The battlefield was scorched. The fleet above, ashes and wreckage. But Aurelius smiled through the blood on his teeth. Because they hadn't failed. They had bought the stars. Galactic Council Station. Hours later, the chamber was silent as Kaya Holt stood before the stunned alien delegates. Live feeds of the burning battlefield played behind him. Not propaganda. Truth. You laughed at us, Kaya said softly. You disarmed us. You thought patience was weakness. He turned, hands clasped behind his back, eyes burning with something that made even warlords fall silent. You were wrong. In the quiet aftermath, somewhere between the stars, Admiral Vale's fleet had burned, Aurelius had bled, and thousands of humans had given everything. But the Ark was free. And humanity had spoken, not with words, with fire. The stars had never looked so still. For centuries, humanity had gathered beneath them in peace, whispering prayers, making promises, dreaming of unity. But now the stars were about to witness something else, something ancient and relentless. War. The command deck of the Aegis Prime was a cathedral of steel and silence. Holoscreens hovered like pale ghosts, feeding data into the air, fleet formations, energy spikes, diplomatic frequencies. Ambassador Kaya Holt stood at the center of it all, her hands resting on the rail, as though holding the universe itself steady. The alien fleet spread across the void like a dark crescent, over 800 warships of the Zilari Dominion, each one bristling with siege weapons capable of boiling oceans. The Galactic Council's token peacekeeping vessels lingered at the edges, pretending neutrality, their cowardice written in their silence. Council frequency still open, Ambassador, reported Ensign Malik. They're waiting for us to kneel. Kaya's eyes were dry. She had begged. She had pleaded. She had tried to speak the language of peace to those who only respected the language of power. They thought we'd keep bowing, she whispered. They thought mercy meant weakness. She turned toward the holographic projection of Sol. It hung like a fragile jewel, still untouched by the darkness gathering around it. She closed her eyes for a brief second. In the back of her mind, she heard her father's voice from long ago under the night sky. One day, Kaya, they'll see that the stars don't belong to them, or us. They belong to the one who made them, and only he decides how long they shine. When she opened her eyes, the softness was gone. Patch me through, she said. The council chamber flickered into view, a grand floating hall of alien species, their faces layered in disgust, amusement, and contempt. High Chancellor Ixet, a serpentine creature wrapped in gold filaments, slithered forward. Humanity has no right to speak of war, it hissed. Lay down your arms. Accept the Dominion's authority, and your species may survive as laborers. Kaya didn't flinch. You made a mistake, she said, voice low and steady. You confused patience with surrender. Laughter rippled through the chamber, cruel, dismissive. Kaya raised her chin slightly. Her next words carried the weight of every war, every grave, every promise made under the shadow of foreign boots. From this moment forward, there are no more negotiations. No more begging. No more bending. She pressed a small brass switch embedded in the console before her. A single transmission blinked into the void. 2 words. Negotiations over. A silent shiver passed through the stars. Then Earth's night side lit up. Hidden beneath the crust of Mars, Titan, Europa, and the asteroid belt, centuries of quiet human engineering came alive. Dreadnoughts rose from shadows. Cloaked fleets unfolded like wings of iron. Orbital minds woke like a slumbering beast. Every world where humanity had been mocked as a lesser race now revealed its teeth. All units, execute Skyfire Doctrine, Kaya commanded. Her voice echoed through every Terran vessel, every captain, every soldier, every soul. On the outer rim of the system, the first salvo roared to life. 1,000 kinetic slugs crossed the void like silent thunderbolts. They struck the Zilari vanguard before the aliens even registered the firing. One battleship split in half, venting plasma like blood into the black. Another turned into a shrapnel cloud. Then came the second wave, plasma lances and gravitic warheads. The void burned. The alien fleet panicked. They had known humanity as talkers, diplomats, builders. But they had forgotten. Humanity were also survivors, fighters, dreamers who had learned to sharpen dreams into weapons. Multiple Dominion ships disabled. Enemy formations collapsing. Repeat, collapsing. Human fleet entering attack pattern Delta Sigma. Kaya watched it unfold like a conductor before an orchestra. No celebration. No arrogance. Just the calm weight of a people who had been pushed too far. And then something quiet and unexpected happened. Down on Earth, in the crowded streets of cities and villages, people looked up at the night sky. Some clenched their fists, some wept, and some whispered prayers. On a small farm in what had once been called Kansas, an old woman pressed her hands together and looked at the stars. "They thought we were alone out there," she whispered. "But someone's been with us all along." The Zilari tried to rally. Massive siege cannons turned toward Sol. But humanity had planned for this centuries ago. Shield arrays hidden beneath Venus's orbit ignited, bending energy like light through glass. The enemy's first strike scattered harmlessly across the shield net. Then humanity struck back, hard. The dreadnought Absolution emerged from behind Europa's shadow, its main railgun glowing like the heart of a sun. One clean shot, one divine lance of kinetic fury, punched through the Zilari flagship, splitting it from crown to keel.
"Flagship down! We got them! We actually got them!"
Kaya didn't smile, not yet. War wasn't won by a single strike. But a line had been crossed. For the first time in galactic history, the Dominion bled. High Chancellor Ixet's hologram flickered back into view, its golden coils trembling. "Humans, what have you done?" It hissed. Kaya's reply was quiet, terrifying in its simplicity. "We stopped asking for permission to exist." The alien's eyes widened, and for the first time the council chamber fell silent. In orbit, the battle spread like wildfire. Terran warships moved with precision, cutting through alien formations like surgical blades. Entire Dominion squadrons crumbled under coordinated strikes. Human captains fought with fire and prayer in their hearts, their battle cries echoing across encrypted channels. For Earth, for the fallen, for the God who never abandoned us. The stars no longer looked still. They burned. The war was not quiet. It was born in fire, carved in steel, and finished in silence. When the last Zilari warship cracked apart under the weight of Terran fire, the void did not cheer. It simply remembered. Wreckage drifted between Earth and Mars like burned leaves in a black river. The Dominion fleet, once a symbol of unstoppable power, was now just twisted metal and fractured bone. One by one, their ships went dark. Some tried to flee, others sent desperate transmissions. Humanity didn't chase. It didn't need to. The message was already written in the stars. We will not kneel. On the command deck of the Aegis Prime, Ambassador Kaya Holt stood alone before the glass wall. The great blue curve of Earth filled the viewport, bruised but unbroken. Below, the fleets were returning. Some limped, some burned, but they were coming home. "Status," she asked softly. 80% of the Dominion fleet neutralized, Ensign Malik reported. His voice trembled, not from fear this time, but something heavier. Awe. "Council ships are pulling back." They didn't intervene, they just watched. Kaya's hands tightened on the railing. Of course they did. They were waiting to see if we'd die or rise. She turned. Officers stood at their posts, faces streaked with exhaustion, some wrapped in bandages, some missing friends who'd never return. But in their eyes burned the quiet fire of people who had just rewritten history. "Casualty reports?" she asked. The room stilled. 72,000, came the answer. No one spoke after that. 72,000 souls, sons, daughters, fighters who would never see the dawn. Kaya closed her eyes. She didn't cry, not yet. She pressed her forehead gently against the cold glass, whispering words no one else could hear. "Someone carried us through this fire, so let me carry them now." Across the planet, something extraordinary unfolded. In mosques, churches, temples, and empty fields, people knelt, not in fear, but in thankfulness. Some didn't know what name to use. Some just whispered to the sky. An alien drone, one of the few surviving Zilari observers, hovered outside a Terran refugee camp. A child sat beneath the night sky, hands clasped together, whispering softly. The drone's processor recorded, "Who are you speaking to?" The boy smiled. "Not to someone you can see." And in that moment, the alien machine did not understand, but it remembered. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session days later. Their grand chamber, once filled with laughter at Terran pleas, was now thick with a silence they could not break. High Chancellor Ixet, wounded but alive, spoke with a voice that carried no arrogance. "We have witnessed something unexpected." Kaya stood before them, no longer a supplicant, but the voice of a species that had earned its place with blood, prayer, and iron. "Humanity," she said, "is not here to dominate. We're not here to conquer, but we will never again be treated as less." One of the counselors, a crystalline being from the Zyran axis, asked, "You fought a godless empire and survived. How?" Kaya's reply was simple. "We were never alone." The chamber fell silent again. Not in mockery, in respect. On a quiet hill outside Islamabad, where the sky was clear and the power grid still recovering, an old farmer stood beneath the stars. The night was cool. The air smelled of soil and smoke. Above him, thousands of human-made satellites shimmered among the constellations. He raised a weathered hand toward the sky. "This can't just be an accident," he whispered. His granddaughter, barefoot, curious, looked up too. "Did God help us, Nana?" The old man smiled gently. "He always did. But this time, we finally helped ourselves too." Back aboard the Aegis Prime, Kaya walked alone through the memorial bay. Names floated in light, a river of the fallen. Captain Aurelius, Lieutenant Ryan Solis, thousands more. She placed her hand against the glass. "You didn't die for dust," she whispered. "You died so the stars would remember us differently." She straightened her back, shoulders squared. Humanity had not just survived. It had become something more. Not an empire, not a vassal. A people with a voice, and the stars had listened. Above Earth, the fleets aligned in silent formation. No speeches. No music. Just a single flare launched into the dark. A streak of gold across the void. A tribute, a promise. This time, humanity would not be written as a footnote in someone else's history. This time, they were the authors. Kaya whispered to the stars. "Negotiations over. A new beginning begins." And far above, where light met silence, it almost felt as if something greater, something unseen, was smiling back.